If I could have but one wish, it would be that I wish I could view this video as somebody else having made it, because this will be the most comprehensive video on reload your AK-47 Avtomat Kalishnikov, whatever commie word starts with an M, in the history of the internets. Now, I a while back, I asked one of my the person that I started this channel with, the Big Sarge 101, said, "Hey man, you've got a background in martial arts. I've got a bit of a background in martial arts. Why don't we talk about fighting on our channel? We talk about survival. It makes sense that why don't we just go ahead and talk about the flip side to that coin?" He's like, "No, dude, you can't do that." And I said, "Why not? Everybody's doing it. We'll talk about fighting. We'll teach people how to kick some ass." He says, to me, he says, "Ron, what happens when they try to go and kick somebody's ass, and then all that they know about is what you've told them about kicking somebody's ass, and then they get their ass kicked?" He said, "That's on you then." And I'm like, okay, fine, I won't talk about fighting. Sheesh. It's like, how are you going to teach somebody that? How are you going to teach somebody the measure of in a fight? It's not how hard you fight or what you have to fight with. It's how far you're willing to go in that fight, or what you're trying to accomplish in that fight. As an example, two men engage in a fight. One man's in a little bit of a fist fight. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna box this dude, whatever." The other man is trying to kill the other guy. Only one of them's trying to kill somebody. Odds are the guy who's trying to kill the other guy is going to be coming up on top, because the one guy is going to have his little ethics, and he's going to be thinking, okay, Queensberry rules. Going to old fisticuffs, and then the other guy is just going to be taking him apart piece by piece, probably starting with the ears, maybe bite his nose off or something. I don't know. But that brings us to the subject at hand, and this is the delicate subject of the speed reload, and how the subject has caused one of my friends to appear to be a little bit upset in one of his videos, his last video that he's going to be making on the subject of speed reloads. And that is Bison Hawk 1, and I wouldn't want any of my friends to be upset about anything. But it is going to be some of those things that's going to occur, especially on the internets, and as we cross these bridges who have trolls underneath them, it's easy for them to get under our skin. Now, I will say what troubles me, and it's mostly because it's been pointed out to me, is that we quantify certain firearm techniques as, this is the speed technique, this is the Hollywood technique, the speed reload, the Hollywood reload, the Chicago reload, the Italian reload, which those are two totally different things. But take a speed reload, for example, with the AK-47. The idea, it's a non-retention method of reloading, which there's a very interesting story I was made privy to about how the technique of magazine retention really came about. And it's a very interesting story, and I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to talk about it. But I'll give you the gist of it. The gist of it is a very, very qualified and extremely highly trained division of the armed services was in an area in an unpleasant situation. And up to that point, they were trained, and they fought to they push the little button on their AR-15s, the magazine falls free, or you give it a little bit of help, and then you load the next one and you move on. There's nowhere for you to really stick your extra magazines. Now, before you get all crazy and think, well, you know what, we're not soldiers and this and that and the other thing, please continue to hear me out as I take a sip of this coffee. So these guys fight and fight and fight. And in their mission, originally, it was only supposed to last a matter of, I think it was supposed to be over within the hour, but they ended up having to stay overnight and then some. And they got to the point of needing to be resupplied. Now, when they were resupplied through a supply drop, instead of having loaded magazines, it was simply bare bullets and stripper clips. So all of a sudden, these very high level of training persons had 2 and 3 magazines left, but all these stripper clips of bare bullets. Thus began the birth of magazine retention and training. Usually the way that those techniques come down is, believe it or not, a training company such as Thunder Ranch or Front Sight, the really big ones. They begin to train in a certain way, and it trickles down as these people who go to these different training seminars. I'm not going to say that they mimic the things that their instructors teach them, but it's sort of these techniques roll downhill. Everything from the spooning thumbs when you're shooting to holding your firearm pointed down instead of up, which is another interesting story of how we began to do that. So, here we are. Magazine retention, and I got my friend being upset because he doesn't want to dent up his $5 commie magazines that he's certain will no longer be available. Sorry, man, I couldn't resist. Now, getting back to my original point, I know that the person watching this, you didn't play football when you were in school, but you play like you practice in football. That is to say, you train like you fight. Now, in football, you will usually have the very last practice. It'll be a one a day, and it'll be light, and you'll either have like just your helmet or just your shoulder pads, and it's going to be, nearly non-contact and everything else. But before that, it is 100% full speed, full contact. The reason being is the muscle memory and all those techniques of all those different plays and those different maneuvers, as well as your body toughness, needs to become accustomed to that full speed that you'll be going in the actual game itself. The point is that if, for example, our mommy was in charge of the football team, and she's like, well, it doesn't make any sense for anybody to get hurt when it's not the game, or it doesn't make any sense for anybody to get hurt at all, so why risk injury by going 100% the whole time you practice, every time you run, as if it's the Super Bowl or the game of a lifetime. But it just has to do with the teams that don't do that won't be prepared for the other teams that do. The thing about muscle memory and firearms manipulation is that it doesn't come down to the last technique that your muscles memorize. It'll be the last techniques that your muscles have mastered. And mastery only occurs after about 10,000 hours of training, give or take, depending on the person, depending on what it is you're trying to master. But that's kind of the rule of thumb, is 10,000 hours of training will bring you to a level of mastery. Now let's get down to the difference between training and practice. Training is going to be, you are observed by a higher qualified instructor, and your techniques and your different methods will be critiqued and corrected if necessary. and that will be the training. Also, training involves new processes, new procedures. Practice is you are reviewing those same fundamentals that you were trained in previously. Now, I would like to try to wrap everybody's mind around the concept of, let's say, there's no such thing as a speed reload. It's just a reload. A reload is a reload. You're putting more bullets in the gun. The reason why the non-retention reload is a very good idea to practice has to do with the practical philosophy and the practical theory of what it is you are practicing for. So in a fight for your life with a rifle, when you are at the point where you have just ran out of ammunition in your magazine, it's going to be a pretty nasty situation, and odds are you may or may not make it to that second magazine anyway. Think about it. We're not really talking about the scenarios that we're familiar with, the ones from the movies where it seems like we can take cover and then reload when we have cover and things like that. It may be an active shooter response is a lot more likely than the whole falling from the sky or The Walking Dead. And in which case, if you are responding to an active shooter and you have made it to the end of your magazine, the dent is not important at all. It's irrelevant. Now you do say Bison Hawk 1 talked about logistics wins wars, and that is extremely true. But that doesn't end up having to be planning for, we're going to abbreviate our tactics in order to make the logistics meet them. You need to have your logistics meet your tactics, not the other way around. And if you cannot perform certain tactics due to logistics, then you need to totally rethink your strategy and what responses and what particular preps. In the case of say a non-retention reload with magazines dropping free and getting dented, I would recommend, to answer that, is to begin thinking of it only as a reload, and just concentrate on the fact that you do in fact fight like you train. So if all of your shooting is standing bolt upright at the shooting range and you're taking it nice and easy, then you can't expect to behave any differently than in any scenario, because that's just the way that you're shooting. To give yourself so many times and so many decisions to make, I don't think is a very good idea. The people in the service that do have that level, I mean, they train and train and train. I mean, I just heard a story about how the Navy SEALs shoot the rifling out of their 6-hour pistols. Shooting the rifling out of a 6-hour, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of training. That's a lot of practice. And I'm betting that those guys couldn't even tell you one way or the other whether or not the magazine falls free or if they stick it in their backpack. My thoughts on it are, I don't know about having a dummy mag for the reload as opposed to having it be live fire. Perhaps when practicing a reload, if having the magazine being damaged is a concern, I would earmark 2 pistols or 2 magazines for practice. Keep your other magazines for nice. Keep your absolute best magazines, your 6 or hopefully 8 best magazines for absolute nice, perfect condition for your little bag of possibilities, not to get into too fine a detail. And then Unfortunately, you may use up some of your gear in the training that you'll be partaking in, should you be manning the weapon that you have chosen to man, which is a close range, fast response carbine. Anyway, that is just what I wanted to add to this volatile conversation. As always, beware of the trolls, because they don't care one way or the other. They're just looking to climb under your skin when it appears that the little box in front of you is upsetting you. And I don't know. Anyway, y'all be good, and as always, I enjoy the discourse. It's a good time, and yeah, we'll see y'all later.